Well, Tony Popovic, Socceroos head coach, has just announced the Australia squad for the upcoming World Cup qualifiers against Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. Crucial matches coming up in November. And the squad that has been announced is quite incredible. So many changes, so many exciting inclusions, some surprise inclusions. We are going to break down the squad, react to it, and discuss maybe some potential starting 11s we could see from this team. Obviously, we learnt a lot about how the Socceroos are going to play from the last couple of games. Those positive results against China and Japan last month. And well, I'll tell you what, there's been so many changes to the squad, which is surprising. I don't think we expected to see this many changes, considering that those results performances last month were pretty good. We're pretty good. We got the obviously the win against China, which was probably expected. We needed to get that win, and then the draw against Japan, which was probably the surprise result. I don't think many people expected us to get a point away from Japan. But so much to talk about in this squad when it comes to the likes of Hayden Matthews, Ryan Grant, Ceres, the Sydney FC duo joining the team. No necessary Irankunda. We'll be discussing that as well. Yengi and Barella return to the squad, as well as Martin Boyle and Milos Deganek. So much to discuss. So much to discuss. We'll start off from bottom, working the way to the top of the pitch. So goalkeepers, no changes there. Not particularly surprising. It's something that we've talked about, I think, for a little while now, that goalkeeping, sort of the goalkeeping department for the Socceroos feels like it's pretty set now. You know, Ryan, Gauchi, Izzo. It feels like I think we're all pretty happy with those three guys being the goalkeepers for the Socceroos for the foreseeable future, at least. Obviously, someone like Lawrence Thomas could sort of come into that setup as well. And there's a cohort of young goalkeepers coming through, especially in the A-League as well, who might see a Socceroos call up in years to come. But for the foreseeable future, I think these three are the way to go. Tarnley in the live chat, good to see you here. He says, "Hey mate, a very interesting squad, very interesting indeed." I was stunned. I was shocked reading through the names, and look, excited overall. Like that's my reaction. I'm excited about the squad, and very intrigued to see how Tony Popovic utilizes these new players. That is for sure. But in terms of that goalkeeping department, no changes there, and no surprise. Obviously, the big talking point in regards to goalkeepers is, whether we will see Joe Gauchi continue to start. We did see Gauchi start both the game against China and Japan last month. And I think we will expect to see him start once again. We know Matt Ryan is still the captain. Tony Popovic confirmed that in his press conference just earlier this morning. But for me, I think it is still Gauchi. I mean, Ryan just, sitting on the bench at AS Roma. Look, Joe Gauchi isn't getting that much game time. It's Paul Izzo who, out of the three goalkeepers, is getting the most amount of game time at the moment. But Joe Gauchi, I mean, still relatively young, the youngest out of those three goalkeepers, a lot of potential. And hopefully he does get game time at Aston Villa more so this season. Whether it might come in, the FA Cup, we'll wait and see. Potentially maybe a loan move for Joe Gauchi to get more game time. That could be an option for him as well. But he feels like he could certainly be a Socceroos goalkeeper for potentially the next decade, especially with Matt Ryan, into his 30s now. Joe Gauchi feels like he's sort of the next one to step up as well. Jack Lang, good to see you here. And yes, we'll touch on the defense right now. Jack says in the live chat here on YouTube, good to see Hayden get in. Curious if Farrell and Waddingham will make the squad in the future. Well, Jack, I think two players we could definitely see in the Socceroos setup in the future. Jacob Farrell is probably not that far off. We know he's been struggling with injury a little bit at Portsmouth this season, which is a shame. But he's a guy who just feels like he's destined to be a Socceroo in the near future. It could well come next year, I reckon. As long as he stays fit and gets some good game time at Portsmouth, he'll absolutely put himself into contention. The left wing backs for this squad, Geordie Boss, as is Bajic. No surprises there for me. Geordie Boss has to be the starter, as is Bajic, the more experienced option. Bajic starting the A-League season within the last month with Melbourne City. But yeah, Jacob Farrell feels like he may well be the third choice, I reckon, in terms of left wing backs. Just trying to sort of rack my memory here. I don't think I've ever seen Jacob Farrell play a left wing back role. We've seen Jacob Farrell play sort of a left center back role. So that could potentially be another reason why he might include someone like Jacob Farrell, because he provides that versatility. He could drop in as a central defender as well, because he did play that role at Central Coast Mariners a little bit, but more often the sort of a left back in a back for Jacob Farrell, but certainly could play either role on the left side of defense. The central defenders there. I mean, as Jack says here, good to see Hayden get in. Hayden Matthews, that's the real surprise. I don't think we expected to see it, but it's well deserved. It is well deserved. He's made a great start to the A-League season. So young. So I think he's just 20 years of age, Hayden Matthews, enormous potential. There's been rumors, I believe, over the last few months of him being linked to moves overseas, and he will almost certainly get that move within the next 12 months, we expect. The other centre backs there, you got Kai Rolls, Burgess, Suter, Geria, Deganek. In terms of the squad sort of chart that I've listed here on YouTube, I've put Geria as one of those central defenders, sort of on the right side of centre back. And I think that's where we'll expect him to play. That's where he started in the Japan game. Miloš Deganek as well. Again, another surprise, but great to see him return. Obviously, Gianni Stenson is out with injury. That's a big blow. And obviously, Chikati's still out. So a couple of younger centre-backs who are out. So Miloš Deganek steps in, but still a very reliable defender who obviously featured in the most recent World Cup for the Socceroos. Kazor in the chat, welcome to the live chat here, says, worst squad I've seen in a long time. Hot take, Kazor. Says, why are we putting in 30-plus-year-olds into the squad with no experience while trying to get our country in a World Cup? But it's good to see Matthews in there. Interesting take, Kazor. I can certainly see where you're coming from, especially considering we have some fantastic young players coming through. I mean, obviously, the one that you're probably referring to is Anthony Caceres. That's another big call in midfield. Caceres joins the likes of Irvine, O'Neill, Yazbek, and Max Ballard, who we'll touch on in just a moment. Anthony Caceres, look, another one that was rumored. It was rumored in the lead up to the squad announcement that he was going to be included in the squad. Look, he's been a really reliable player for Sydney FC over the last few years, a real underrated player. I don't mind him being included. I don't expect him to start, but he provides something different to those other midfield players. He's really, in a way, the only real sort of out-and-out attacking midfielder, if you like. I mean, obviously, probably McGree's probably in that department as well. Hrustich also, now that I'm looking at it. But the thing is, with the squad, we're not really playing with sort of a number 10, like a playmaker, if you like. I guess you can consider those two sort of wide players in the final third to be two number 10s. You could think of it like that. So Caceres, we could see him play that deeper role as one of those, I guess, those sixes, if you want to call it, or one of those more attacking playmakers. You could play that sort of role as well, Anthony Caceres. So provides a bit of versatility. Pseudo-intellectual, thank you very much for the kind super chat. Says, hey, hope everyone has a good week. Joe Gauchi says intellectual here in the live chat. Thank you very much for the very kind super chat. And yes, hope you guys are enjoying your week. A great way to celebrate Friday with an exciting Socceroos squad. Joe Gauchi, that's right, once again in the Socceroos squad. We'll touch on the right wing backs as well. Miller and Grant in there. Ryan Grant returning to the side. It's been a few years since we've seen Ryan Grant in the Socceroos setup. Tony Popovic in his press conference did touch on the fact that that maybe on that right side of defence, the Socceroos lacked a little bit of experience. When we look at some of the names that Graham Arnold called up, we look at the likes of Gethin Jones, Nathaniel Atkinson. Who else is in there too? I mean, there's sort of a few that we've been juggling around. Ryan Strain's another option as well. A lot of these guys have been struggling for injury, or someone like Nathaniel Atkinson has just returned to action for Melbourne City in recent weeks. And interestingly enough, hasn't even been playing on the right side of defence. Has been playing in midfield, Nathaniel Atkinson. But Miller retains his spot after a couple of decent games last month as well. So look, I'm happy with that defense. It's sort of, if we again sort of play that back five, which I think is the expectation, you've got two players in each sort of position, if you like, across that back five. So great depth, great mix of youth and experience, especially bringing someone like Hayden Matthews, a younger option, in there as well. I don't mind it. Obviously, if the likes of Chikati and Stenstis were fit, they probably would have found their way into this squad. But I'm happy with that backline, that's for sure. And again, midfield. I mean, as we were talking about a moment ago, Caceres, Irvine, O'Neill, Yazbek, and Max Ballard. Look, as a Mariners fan, so good to see Max Ballard join the team. This is a guy who has obviously been performing so well for the Central Coast Mariners for the last few years, and now this current season, I should say, playing his football over in the Netherlands. And by all accounts, is performing really, really well week in, week out. In the top division, in the Eredivisie, in the Netherlands. So well-deserved call-up. Max Ballard was a player that a lot of people brought up in last month's squad announcement. A lot of people questioning why he wasn't called up and someone like Luke Bratton was We should mention no Luke Bratton in this squad. But Ballard does finally get the call up. Also interesting not to see no Keanu Bacchus in the squad as well. Bacchus has been left out. The other one as well is no O'Neill. No, sorry, not O'Neill. Alex Robertson. That's the one we're thinking of. Alex Robertson is the player who's also missed out as well. And that's another big call. But Tony Popovic was a little bit vague in his press conference. Don't know if you guys saw it, but he was... I don't know if there's sort of much to read into it, but Tony Popovic was saying something along the lines of as if he wasn't available to be picked. We did hear word last month that there was some sort of FIFA eligibility issue going on where he couldn't be involved in the squad. But Tony Popovic was making it out as if Robertson didn't want to play for the Socceroos, as if Robertson did not make himself available. It sounded like the Socceroos were keen on Alex Robertson to bring him into the side once again. But this is just from what I gathered. We'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. But from what I gathered, it sounded like Alex Robertson wasn't interested in playing for the Socceroos, which is a serious concern. Which is a serious concern because this is a guy with enormous potential, getting some decent game time at Cardiff City in the English Championship at the moment. So that's an interesting one for sure. Will Max Ballard play? Asks Intellectual. I mean, I don't expect him to start, to be fair, but certainly could play a role off the bench, especially if we need to defend the lead. Max Ballard, a very solid defensive midfielder. Mark in the live chat. Welcome, Mark. Says, love that Boyle is back. Yeah, Martin Boyle back into the side as well after, again, starting the season with Hibs. G'day to Yellow and Navy Football Podcast in the live chat. Says, Max Ballard is amazing. We love Maxi. So good to see him in the squad. Tan Lee here says, I was hoping to see Mohamed Toure. Yes, no Toure in the squad. And we should look at that sort of the top end of the pitch there. The strikers, Duke, Yengi, Borello. So Yengi and Borello returning to the side. And then sort of those wide playmakers, wingers, whatever you want to call them. We've got the likes of Goodwin and McGree, who would probably expect to play off that left-hand side. And then on the right, Boyle, Hrustic, and Velupale. So no Daniel Arzani, no Sammy Silvera, and of course, no Nestor Irankunda, which is a real interesting one as well. Tony Popovic touched on the topic regarding Nestor Irankunda in his press conference, just saying that, you know, they wanted to let him continue to develop at Bayern Munich. It's an interesting one considering that they picked him for last month. You know, look, he started... We look at Irankunda's performances for the Socceroos last month in those two games. Started the game against China, didn't really have much of an impact. He came off at half-time, right? Nestor Irankunda against China. And for McGree. And then in the second game, didn't come on at all. Didn't play at all in the Japan game. So you wonder whether maybe Popovic just is preferring to bring in someone like a Boyle, you know, like Martin Boyle to play sort of that role there ahead of Irankunda. So it's a really, really interesting call. Really, really interesting. Intellectual here in the live chat says Gauchi has been getting some game time at Villa. Just cup games, but good to see. And thoughts on no Nest, as Intellectual says here. Yeah, as we're just saying, it is a shock. It is a shock. I think a player of his talent and his ability, I think you'd have him in the squad every single time. But yeah, really interesting. Really, really interesting. Again, you look at the other players in that department. Velupale, Hrustic is obviously a bit of a different player, as is McGree. Goodwin there as well. Yeah, I would have included Irankunda. Look, even over someone like Velupale, I know Velupale made a great start to his Socceroos life last month, scoring on debut. But I mean, Nestor Irankunda, what a talent! You know, what a player. Especially, look, if this was just a couple of friendlies, I'd probably understand. But a couple of crucial games, you could use someone like Nestor Irankunda again off the bench. Something we talked about in those games last month is how Nestor Irankunda would have been way more effective coming off the bench as an impact player if we were chasing a game. I remember when we were doing the live watch along for that Japan game, where it was 1-1 in the dying stages. I was like, in the final 10 minutes, imagine bringing on Nestor Irankunda there. They didn't do it in the end. I was like, imagine if we could just throw on Nestor Irankunda. You know, Japan, we're really going forward, chasing the winner. Just throw on Nestor Irankunda as Japan are pushing forward, get Irankunda away on the counterattack, and we grab the winner. So that's my thought. G'day to Nathan in the live chat. Good to see you here as well. Sam is also here saying, hey, Lockie, good timing as I'm on my lunch break to watch a good old stream. Thanks for jumping in, Sam. Says, I'm finally happy to see the Jets play tonight against the Wanderers, hoping for a win compared to your 2-2 draw. Yes, very excited for A-League Round 4 kicking off tonight as well. Intellectual says, ridiculous. The more I think about it, Popper's call to drop Nestor. Yeah, look, and again, his reasoning was interesting. I remember in that press conference this morning, he was talking about how he wanted just to let him continue to settle in and develop at Bayern Munich. But he's been at Bayern Munich for months now, right? He's been at Bayern Munich for months and months now. This is November, and he was there what, June or something? May, June? Nestor could have went over to Germany. So he's been there for almost 6 months now. He's getting game time with the second team, with the reserves in Germany. So yeah, it's quite a fascinating one for sure. Nathan asks, am I going to the Mariners game on Sunday? Yes. So we will talk about the striking department as well. Duke, Yengi, Borello, will say, very happy to see Cassini Yengi return to the side. Obviously, a striker that I think a lot of us are big fans of. I think the consensus is that we all see Cassini Yengi as sort of the go-to soccer striker for the next few years at least. Mitchell Duke is in there once again. Again, receives maybe some unfair criticism. I think he plays a decent role. He's a very physical striker, a great sort of player to hold up the ball, get the other players involved, and that's sort of the role that Duke plays. Brandon Borello is a surprising one. I will say I didn't expect to see Brandon Borello called up to the squad. Having said that, Borello has made a good start to this season at Wanderers. Scored last weekend against Adelaide. And provides something different as well. Provides something different. He's very mobile. He'll run for days, Brandon Borello. And versatile as well. He can play through the middle as a striker, as he has been for Wanderers this season, or out wide. We could see Borello come in a wide position as well. So you've got 3 strikers there who are sort of all, sort of different profiles. We should touch on some of the omissions as well. No Stamatolopoulos, who's missed out, and no Taggart. No Adam Taggart, but Adam Taggart, again, just a few weeks into the A-League season with Perth Glory. Intellectual says, Yengi, please play. Hey, look, if it was me, I would start Yengi for sure. I would start Yengi. He's such an enormous talent. He's someone that I've talked about a lot over the last couple of years as, when we saw him coming through the ranks at Adelaide United and he went to Wanderers for a year. He's just such an exciting player with the attributes he has. Like, he's so tall and strong, a good finisher, and he's pacey too. Like, he's got pace. So he's got all the attributes. And he's only, I don't know how old he is off the top of my head. He must be like 23, 24 now, Cassini Yengi, something around that. So a lot of potential. A lot of potential as well. So I would like to see Yengi start. Maybe Duke comes off the bench, especially maybe if we're trailing in a game. Even sort of shake up the system a little bit. You can go to the 2 strikers, could play Duke and Yengi together, or Yengi and Borello. We've got options there as well. Very interested to see what Popovic decides to do as well in sort of that front third in regards to whether he does play with those sort of inverted wingers. When I say that, I mean we saw the surprise sort of tactical move we saw Popovic deploy in the couple of games is playing Goodwin on the right-hand side, which is, we haven't seen Craig Goodwin play on the right wing that much, but usually deployed on the left. But on the right-hand side, Goodwin in that position, which I think worked, allows him to cut in on that left foot. And obviously he's got a fantastic goal against China, cutting in that sort of position. You got someone like Krustic, who, again, a left-footed player. Maybe we'll see Martin Boyle and Vulu Pelé, more right-footed players, playing on that left wing. So some interesting sort of talking points there as well. Again, just looking at the midfielders, I mean, it'll be fascinating to see who does start. You'd imagine that the obvious one is Irvine and O'Neill. I think that would make the most sense. Those 2 players have sort of been featuring quite a lot in the starting 11 for the Socceroos over the past year or so. Yazbek, Caceres, Ballard, all could easily come in. I mean Yazbek is probably the one we could see potentially start over O'Neill as well. Max Ballard, Caceres, I think we'll expect to see those guys come off the bench for me for the Socceroos. And in terms of that back 5 as well, again, I think you have to stick with what we went for the Japan game, which was Miller, Geria, Suter, Burgess started against Japan, and Boss as well, and Boss. So for me, that looks like sort of the go-to starting backline as well. And for me, again, for the goalkeepers, I would start Gauci. I think he did enough in those couple of games last month to show that he is well and truly capable of playing as a goalkeeper for the Socceroos. Mark, with a question here in the live chat. Thanks for the question, Mark. Any opinion on the opponent, Saudi Arabia? Super tough, super difficult opponent. Obviously, we know that from playing them over the last few years. Some really tricky matchups, and we know what very famously Saudi Arabia with some incredible results and performances in the World Cup a couple of years ago. So this is the game. This is the game. I know we said that for the last month's game, but that was especially because we made that terrible start. That loss and the draw in the first couple of games. But this is the game now. Match day 5. We're coming up to the halfway point in these qualifiers. And the Saudi Arabia game, whoever wins this could well go on to qualify for the World Cup. Like if there is a winner from this game, they could well go through to qualify for the World Cup. That this is almost like a playoff for the World Cup. It is basically that. Japan are almost certainly going to finish top of the group. I don't think anyone's disputing that. The other teams in the group have put in some big performances and could well surprise and jump up and really challenge for that second spot in the group. We're talking about the likes of Indonesia, who obviously provided some headaches for the Socceroos. We're talking about obviously Bahrain, who defeated the Socceroos, and China as well, who on their day could grab some surprise results as well. But Saudi Arabia, I think, is the one we expect to really be contesting for that second spot in the group. So this game in Melbourne, really important that it's on home soil first up here. Really has to be a win. If it's a loss, that's seriously panic stations. I think it's serious panic stations. Look, a draw isn't bad. We'll take a draw. But it does just put that little bit more pressure on the game the following week as well. We know not only are we taking on Saudi Arabia home, but Bahrain away. Okay, Bahrain away, and that's going to be an interesting one because the Socceroos team are going to, a lot of these players were involved a few months ago when Australia lost to Bahrain on the Gold Coast. We have to bounce back. We have to respond and grab a result there against Bahrain and get a win now. But, Bahrain will be high on confidence, knowing that they are capable of defeating the Socceroos team. So that will be a really tricky one as well. That is certainly not a guaranteed result for the Socceroos. So in terms of the Saudi Arabia game, I would really love to win that game. Obviously, it goes without saying, but it almost feels like a must win because there could well be some more surprises coming up for the remainder of this qualifying campaign. We've got Bahrain away. We've got Indonesia at home. We've got Japan at home. We've got China away as well. All these games could be really, 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 really tricky. What this qualifying campaign has taught us so far already, not even halfway through, is that to expect the unexpected. Anything can happen. All right, and we should not take any results for granted. Nations across Asia in football are improving so much, and no game is easy. But yeah, the Saudi Arabia game, man, if we can win that, as I say, it's almost like a playoff for the World Cup. I know it's match day 5 out of 10, but it could well come down to like a few points, maybe a point or goal difference separating Saudi Arabia and Australia for second spot in this group. And as we know, the top 2 go through the World Cup. So a win here, and the Socceroos are well on track for the World Cup. A loss, and then, it's seriously pressure on, that's for sure. So big test for Tony Popovic. But I think this team is up to the test. I think the big takeaway is we look at the team that Tony Popovic has named, and I'm happy with it. I think we are capable, pardon me, of getting a result against both these teams, against Saudi Arabia and Bahrain coming up. No Massimo, says Mark here. Luongo. I believe he's been out injured. Hasn't been playing much lately for Ipswich Town. But I tell you what, if he had been playing regularly and if he was fit, I probably would expect to see him in there. It's an area of the pitch that sort of a lot of people talk about, and there's so many, I guess, there's so much chopping and changing that you could do in that midfield area. We've already talked about some of the players who haven't been included in the squad in midfield. Bacchus has been left out. We were talking about Robertson earlier as well. Someone like Nectar Triantis could come in. That's another defensive midfield option as well. And as you say there, I mean, Luongo is another option also. Another option. So look, 2 huge games coming up in the next couple of weeks. Saudi Arabia at home in Melbourne, which is sort of shaping up as this almost this playoff match because it's so important. And then Bahrain away, 2 tricky tests for Tony Popovic and the Socceroos. Didn't Mas retire from international duty? Asks Intellectual. Well, he did, but as we know, for last month he returned. He sort of, bounced back from retirement. He returned, so he put himself back up for Socceroos selection, which was an interesting one. We talked about it a little bit last month when Tony Popovic came in and Luongo was announced out of nowhere. We wonder maybe if it had something to do with a coaching change. I mean, you just have to. It seems obvious, right? I mean, Arnold steps away and Popovic comes in, and all of a sudden Luongo returns for the first time in a while. So Luongo's back by the looks of things. Luongo is back, and if he was fit and getting regular game time for Ipswich Town, I'm sure he would have been included in this squad as well. I mean, especially if he's playing Premier League football. Massimo Luongo would certainly be in contention, that's for sure. Mish Langerak, another one of those players who a lot of people talk about, obviously still retired from international duty and will be arriving at Melbourne Victory in a couple of months' time as well. Bin Tran in the live chat asks, what about Alex Robertson? Yeah, look, obviously would love to see him in the squad. We always say that. He hasn't been included for a long time. But for anyone who's missed it, go and check out on the Socceroos YouTube channel the press conference that Tony Popovic did. He touched on the Robertson situation because obviously that is a topic that a lot of people talk about and question Popovic about. And he was quite vague on it. But he made it sound like my interpretation from Tony Popovic's words, from my interpretation is that Alex Robertson wasn't keen on playing for the Socceroos right now, at least. He was saying it as if Robertson didn't put himself up for selection. Again, that's just my interpretation. Tony Popovic was a little bit vague, to be honest, when he was explaining it. But it doesn't seem like a straightforward situation. It sounded like that they were pretty keen to pick him. They want him to play for the Socceroos, but they almost made it sound like the ball was in Robertson's court in terms of playing for the Socceroos. So there might be more to the situation than from what we know. Jack asks, is he hoping for Peru or England? I mean, yeah, well, he's got links to Peru, right? Is his mother Peruvian, I believe, if I'm not mistaken? So yeah, Jack, as I'm aware, I believe he can play. I believe he is eligible for both Peru and England, right? I mean, maybe that's what maybe Robertson is looking at. We don't know. We're just purely speculating here. But if that's the case, that's a huge blow for the Socceroos. Obviously, so many people have talked about Alex Robertson over the past a couple of years now, since he featured for the Socceroos in a couple friendly games against Ecuador. You might remember last year, I believe it was early last year. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with that Robertson situation. I mean, we hope it's not him really reconsidering sort of, whether he wants to, which sort of national team he wants to play for. And hopefully he does play for the Socceroos. Spencer, good to see you here in the live chat, says, I heard he's frustrated with the FA over his papers. I mean, we'll see. Maybe it is just simply like a logistical, paperwork issue. We shall see. We're going to tune out in just a second here. Tan Lee with another comment says, too many defenders. Would have rather had a winger or a striker. I mean, I think the fact that there are so many defenders included, again, suggests that we will be going for this back 5 formation, or back 3, if you want to call it, 3 central defenders. So I think that is the expectation. But you're right, Tan Lee, there. I mean, we never saw Graham Idle pick that many defenders, I don't think. 10 defenders all up here for the Socceroos, really. I still think we've got decent options up front. I think we've got enough depth and quality up top there. I mean, maybe we were talking about Irankunda earlier. Maybe a defender could have been dropped for Irankunda. I mean, that probably wouldn't have hurt as well. Violet Volt in the chat here. Great name. Violet Volt says, overall, happy with the squad. These older players coming in are playing full 90s lately, but I would still prefer we throw younger players for the reserve spots. Yeah, especially for those reserve spots, as you say there, Violet. I mean, those players who maybe aren't necessarily going to be playing, but really going to benefit from the experience. It's a big call bringing in someone like Anthony Caceres, who's 32. Ryan Grant, also in his 30s as well. He would only be bringing those players in if they are going to contribute something to the squad. Jack in the live chat here also says, had a look. Robertson is eligible for Australia, England, Scotland, and Peru. Thanks for that, Jack. Violet has also mentioned some players here as well. Some changes that they would have liked to have seen. Triantis, yeah, another player who we brought up who maybe could be looked at for the Socceroos for the future. Truan for Degenek, says Violet. That would have been interesting. Truan's probably not too far off at Melbourne City this season. Has made a good start there. Talbot, Simmons, yeah, two good young defenders as well. Nisbet, Kalik as well, yep. Silvera, Irankunda, Milanovic. Nicholas Milanovic is someone who a lot of people have been bringing up lately, sort of in the past year or so, with some good form at Wanderers. And tell you what, if he continues to play well consistently at Western Sydney, he could see himself get a Socceroos call up in the next year. Toure and Iredale, yeah, again, two players I think I would love to see included in the squad, especially Mo Toure. I mean, we've been seeing he's been grabbing a couple of goals and assists recently, hasn't he? Over in Denmark, playing at Randers, the team of Paul Izzo. So Mohamed Toure, would have loved to have seen him involved in the squad as well. Tarnley also mentions Marcus Eunice. Yeah, another one of those ones for the future. Good to see him getting some game time over in the Netherlands as well, Marcus Eunice. So look, it's an exciting squad. Very curious to see what Tony Popovic decides to do in regards to his starting 11. But overall, I'm happy with it. The changes, look, some big surprises here. But interested to see what Popovic does. And I think after those couple of results last month, personally, I have faith in Popper. I think he is the right man for the Socceroos right now. Those two results against China and Japan last month were good results, the win and the draw. And if he can back it up with a couple of wins here, I mean, I think he may well and truly have, the entirety of the nation behind backing him here as well. So Socceroos set to take on Saudi Arabia and Bahrain next week. An exciting squad for those couple matches. Make sure to stay subscribed to Coast Watch Football for content covering those Socceroos games, including a couple watch-alongs. Big games coming up next week. Guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Make sure to hit the like button on the way out and stay subscribed. My name is Lockie. This is Coast Watch Football. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.